Welcome to the Stumbling Spirit, Contemplations on the Path of Resilience. Whether you realize it or not, you are resilient. It's your birthright. As you take in your next breath, know this truth. It's not only about your capacity to overcome difficult situations, but it's about your courage to do the necessary work to heal, learn, grow, and move forward. What you gain is invaluable wisdom. And it's through these hard stumbles in life that we often discover a new purpose that aligns with our spirit. My name is Fabio da Silva Fernandez, Reiki Master, Mindfulness Coach, and Mystical Explorer. Join me as the Stumbling Spirit podcast highlights the lives of extraordinary people like you, sharing transformative stories and beneficial practices of resilience to guide you on your wellness journey. Renee Sferrazza knows a lot about wine. She's a celebrated sommelier, wine critic, and TV personality with a thriving following on social media. Based in Toronto, Renee has channeled her expertise into a successful venture called Wine by Renee. Even so, her quest of fermenting her passion into a full-bodied business did not come easy. 10 years ago, Renee was unhoused and with only $500 to her name, enrolled in a course to start her sommelier certification. That investment paid off. Renee is here to talk about the spicy, lively, and complex notes of her transformation to become the go-to wine expert in Canada. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show, Renee Sferrazza. Hi, Renee.
Thank you for having me. I am dying over all the wine puns, and I'm very here for it. I was really trying to hold myself together. I'm like, yes, yes, that was my life, but this pun is very funny.
So I have to say that I was a little hesitant about our conversation because I've had guests on the show who have dealt with addiction and
Mm.
also who are recovering addicts. And at the same time, just to be real, people drink in the world and I drink from time to time. I enjoy wine. So I do think that it is a very important conversation for us to have. And
Hmm.
quite frankly, I think that it is really your story that is the spotlight for this conversation as well. So I just wanted to sort of ground us in that before, we continue.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, like the thing is within the wine industry, as you said, there are lots of people that have struggles with alcohol and addiction and all of that. There's people in the wine industry and some of the old guard that I look at from time to time and I was like, you're just at this event to drink the wine. Okay, cool. However, people feel, whatever journey they're going through, that's their own. In the world of academic drinking, what you're mainly focusing on is how does this product reflect where it's from? And it's kind of humanistic in that quality. And yes, there is this hilarious and very real aspect that as much as you make it intellectual, at the end of the day, this is something that can get you drunk. It is also something that kind of has a learning that can be processed through non-alcoholic beverages, other versions of things, because at the end of the day, it is an agricultural product that just has this aspect as well.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about your philosophy of wine.
My philosophy is basically that everybody should enjoy it however they want to enjoy it. Now, like, if you are not a wine drinker, that's fine. There's non-alcoholic products out there. My partner's mother does not drink alcohol at all, but she's recently started exploring the aromas of wine because she's been spending time with me being like, what is so important about this? Why do you care so much about this? And it doesn't mean anything to her. So over time, she started to realize that they all smell different. Over time, she started to realize that, I can have these non-alcoholic beverages and I see a concept or a complexity in it. My concept behind wine is however you get into it, you get into it. But the moment that you kind of dip your toe in the water, it's like entering an ocean. You might start at a shallow shoreline, but you end up going far deeper than you might expect because of just the grand academic nature of this. What makes this product, what makes this wine Its wine is its sense of terroir, which essentially means sense of place. Now, to take that in a different metaphor, would you be yourself if you grew up somewhere else, if you spoke a different language, if you went to a different school, if your parents were different? You are the same, but everything around you is different. Are you different? Are you a different version of yourself? So, what makes that wine unique? Is it where it was grown, who grew it, the climate, the weather from day to day, the year to year? And how does that relate to its final creation when you are meeting it in the present, this very living item?
There's also a cultural element to wine as well too that dates back far back. So I'm wondering whether you can speak to that.
Yeah, so wine is one of the most humanistic things on the planet. Since we learned how to make it in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, everyone's been like, let's just bring this with us. And there are other alcohols around the world. People have been fermenting things since they figured out that if they just leave this long enough, it will create something interesting, and then they basically can taste it if they want to. And we've refined that process. So you see that in kind of the ancient world, which is where we find like wines from Turkey, Lebanon, Greece, Israel. Those are like the ancient world aspects. And some of those regions we don't even really focus on anymore, including Hungary as well as in there. And then we have the old world, which is Europe. So that's that next destination of movement. From there, we have South Africa, Australia. Again, these are regions that have wine brought to them through whatever fraught ways they got to get there, but people brought it with them. They've realized the value of this product. And then it's also been revalued again over time as politicalness, as society changes. Wine has been revalued again as being part of that society. And then you have it in North America. Again, however, the roads to get there are very treacherous and have their own history. This product has been revalued by whoever has then discovered it once meeting it. And we keep it with us. It's around the entire world. I was just in India for a month. There's wine growing in India too, in a wonderful region called Nasik. It's fabulous. And, it's so humanistic in that way. And we seem to have a great connection to it. You can understand what you're drinking, whether it's like, hey, this is this juicy, fun version of something that I like, and it costs maybe $10 for a liter of it, or this bottle is so collectible, one bottle is $20,000. It is made in the same way.
What's interesting too is that it gets passed down from generation to generation. Your background is
Hmm.
Italian, and we all know that within Italian culture, it's very common for a nonno to be making wine in the cantina for dinner, right? So
Mine did, for sure. It was not as good as the wine that I drink now, and bless him for that. But, Italy is called Ionia in ancient scripts because it is the land of wine. Grapes grow very easily there. There's over 3,000 different grape varietals just in Italy alone that are native to that region. My grandfather, he made wine, but he would rebottle it in like old 1 liter pop bottles and just like screw the cap back on. And by the time it was so bad. And by the time you drank it, like you had to mix it with pop because it was incredibly oxidized. And I love you, no, no, but your wine was so bad.
So let's go back in time a bit. So
Mhm.
you, like many people, when you graduated, you struggled to find a job that matched your area of expertise, which was in environmental policy. So
Mhm.
to supplement your income, you worked odd restaurant jobs until you decide to start your own custom lighting business in
Mhm.
2015. So I'm
Yes.
just curious, what inspired you to get into lighting?
Okay, so I'll rewind a little bit more again. So I like every millennial have been through every single financial crisis and thing to ever happen. And this generation is filled with resilient people because we're just like, oh, great. Of course, there's another problem that we now have to deal with. And graduating and moving into the world, I have a degree in environmental policy and urban development. I did try to work for the city of Toronto for a period of time, and I worked for an NGO called the Pembina Institute. And I did my best attempt. What I found was this is a world with really well-meaning people that are somehow willing to not get paid almost anything to do these jobs. And, it just wasn't something that I could do at the time. I've been working since I was 14. So I've always worked in restaurants, either be it like a Tim Hortons or a retail version of something. Like I worked at Tim Hortons in Valley Village when I was 14. And when I moved to Toronto when I was 19, I was still working in restaurants, going to school, finished school, took over NGO work in the morning, was working at restaurants at night. And I got into making custom light artwork, is what I ended up calling it, because I couldn't qualify for some of the certifications that I needed to build it into a bigger business. Because my background is actually that I'm a manual photographer. I ran the photography club in my high school. I ran the mural club in my high school as well. A portion of my degree was based on large scale infrastructure. And I really enjoyed learning electrical work, which my dad actually taught me. And I just started being like, well, if I put this wire with this wire, the light bulb will go on. Great. And then I just kept walking around the city and I found this place that had a bunch of old chandelier parts and I would just like put them together in different ways. I've always been pretty handy. And I ended up doing what every entrepreneur or budding entrepreneur does at the time is try to make somebody pay me for what I was making. And then I just ended up continuing doing that.
So I am wondering about that moment when you decide that the lighting business isn't for you anymore. You're gonna go back to the service industry and you want to work for a specific restaurant, and they're like, okay, you know what? You can work here if you can learn the wine list. So can you talk
Yeah.
about that moment?
Sure. So I will say that I never left service during this. It actually took the pandemic for me to fully leave service and to fully be self-operational. So it was many, many years before while I was working for myself and supplementing at least 50% of my income, it was not until the pandemic that I was able to make the big push because of the CERB benefits, which we can get to down the line. Um, I got a really big order for some lights that it's at a club. I no longer remember what the new name of the club was in Toronto because I made these so long ago. And I was just struggling to make these things that I created and designed, and I could make them, but I put the timeline far too short. And I learned like a very, very valuable lesson in I underestimated the time. I underestimated the cost and I underestimated how much I was going to pay myself. So I learned all three of those lessons with this one project. And I ended up having to get my dad to come and help me. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment, which had like an on-set studio space that was part of it. And I was just like, I can't do this. This is not sustainable. I don't have enough space. I don't have enough overhead capital to continue this forward. And I don't think that I have enough people or enough money to make this what I wanted. And I ended up just kind of stopping or doing light fixture, light artwork whenever people would ask me for it or make it for myself. I still have some of my lights are still in a restaurant in Hamilton called Born and Raised. If you've been there, there's a chandelier in the main entrance. I made that. And there is some banquette connected with wrought iron pipe lighting. I made that as well. It's about 13 feet long. It's really huge. So, and those were the types of things I wanted to make, these massive pieces. And as you even watching your facial expression, be like, how are you going to fit this in this studio apartment? How is this going to happen? It just wasn't feasible. And this is kind of something that I've taken into the rest of my life where it's like, this is not working. I can't move forward with this, so I have to stop this. Now, at the time, I was mainly shifting into moving into restaurants full time. And this is actually at a really critical point in my life because it's where everything starts to come into complete and utter flux. So I was working at this restaurant. I wanted more shifts. I was like, what can I do to get more work? I'm not doing anything else. And they were like, you have to learn the wine list. Like, okay, fine. Very clear, attainable goal. I have to understand what these are so that I can sell them so that they can put me on night shifts and not just be on like brunch and morning and lunch shifts at the time. I always worked in the financial district in Toronto, and lunches were easier. People aren't trying to like ask you a bunch of questions. It's not like the foodies that are coming out, it's the business people. So I asked them, I ended up learning about it, and they were running like wine classes at the time. And one of the managers was doing these wine learning classes for us. And he told me about the wine trade seminars that constantly happen in Toronto all the time. There's about 3 to 4 a month. I'm going to one next week. I'll go to one the week after. They're free. They're completely free for trade professionals, and you can go, you can taste as much wines as you want. You can talk to people from around the world, and you can learn about that region. So there'll be like wines of Ontario, wines of Greece, wines of Argentina, all that type of stuff. So I started learning and going to those.
You were talking about the wine culture and the wine industry and you going to wine tastings and conferences. Eventually, you land a job in Italy.
This is how I landed the job in Italy.
Okay.
This is it. So I would go with my resume and I would just give it, I had nothing to lose. I'm working in Toronto. I'm like 24 at the time. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with anything, and I wasn't really worried, but I was like, I have a resume. I'll just go and I'll just give them to people. I'm like, I'm really good at sales. I work at restaurants. Want me to work for your winery? Speak English really good. And I also knew Italian, so I would like really sell myself to wineries in Italy and just be like, hey, have me come. And that worked. I started developing a friendship with an export manager that was working at a winery called Castello di Rancade in Italy. And I was bugging him, like, you should have me come. And I ended up planning to go. In the process of going, so we booked the trip and I went to live and work in Italy for a handful of months. And in the process of going, the building that I was living in with that studio workspace, that one bedroom apartment, got bed bugs. And if you know about having bed bugs, it's honestly like the worst thing that can happen. And it just ruined my whole, like I could not sleep because you're up all night and there people can just look it up. It is an awful experience to live through. It is nobody wants to have you at their house because they're worried that they're gonna get bed bugs. And I basically had like 2 weeks before I was gonna go on this trip. And I was like, let me just ride out these 2 weeks. I'm quitting my job. I'm going on this trip. I'm working in Italy. No one's gonna be in this apartment because the food for bed bugs is you. It's like you have a bunch of mosquitoes, and if you leave, they leave too, right? So I was like, it'll be fine. I will just go, and when I come back, it'll be gone. And that was my mindset. So I went and I worked in Italy for that period of time. And when I came back is when everything kind of completely shifted.
So before we talk about the shift, I'm wondering if you could talk about that period of time when you were in Italy, what you
Hmm.
did, what that experience was like, how it inspired you.
Yeah, so I was already starting to learn more about wine, and because I have my degree in environmental policy, which also is grounded in an agricultural nature, looking at land and how people are kind of part of all of that. And as I already said, this is a humanistic product. This kind of melds together all the things that I actually cared about and kind of focused on in my degree, which I very much wanted to use as the child of immigrant parents. I was very mad at myself that I was unusing this degree. So when I was working in Italy and starting to learn a lot more of like, oh, this is the making process. While I know that sugar plus yeast equals alcohol, this is how it gets fermented, blah, 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 wine, that blah, blah, blah wine part got filled in by working at a winery and also reintroducing people to these concepts all the time. What makes Prosecco Prosecco? What were they focusing on within the region? What does it mean for indigenous grapes to exist? And I was there for many months. I was living at the winery. I was working with the people there. I had that one friend there, so I ended up becoming entrenched in their friend group as well. And, it was a really funny winery too because it was owned by this old school baron guy who basically has this family lineage that goes back to the doges of Italy, which is like they're like duchesses and dukes of Italy. They're called doges. And it was in a castle, like literally in a castle. And you walk into this castle, and it's any winery that's in Italy that starts with Castello is castle. So it's Castello di Rancade. So it's the castle of Rancade. Italy is very self-explanatory. It sounds really flowery, but this is that. That's all. And this guy was nuts. He would take me on these like wine delivery things because I spoke English, and we would be turning in this roundabout, and he'd stick his hand out the car window yelling to let people pass, let him pass as he would spin around really quickly. Then we would end up somewhere, and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna eat lunch, we're gonna sell wine, and then we're gonna go somewhere else, we'll have a snack." Okay, cool. And it was just this like very random thing where I'm just entrenched in this culture that's also partially my own family culture, because my mom is from a town near there called Treviso. So I got to meet some extra family that was living there that I had not met before. I had met my family in Sicily on my dad's side, but it was really fun to like go back, see where what my parents would have interacted with when they were children, and just kind of explore that, but also learn about this. And it kind of like really set me up for wanting to be in this industry. I was talking to that same export manager who gave me the job, and I was like, "Oh, your wines are in Canada. Why were you looking for a new importer?" Because that's how I had met them at that trade show. At these trade shows, people are either trying to in Toronto or anywhere in an importing market. So Toronto is an importing market, United States is an importing market, Australia, things like that. People are trying to sell their wines for people to either purchase them for restaurants, so like get them on a restaurant wine list, or to find an importer, someone who is going to do the work to say, "Hey, Italian winery, I'm going to sell your wine in this place." He was looking for a new importer. I was like, "Oh, I thought you had one." He's like, "Yeah, but we're really unhappy." And I was like, "Oh, I think I could import your wine. How hard could it be?" So I ended up finishing my job there with the goal of coming back to Toronto to start an importing company for importing wine.
So that is the moment where there is a shift, but it doesn't
Yeah.
come easy because you return and you still have bed bugs in your apartment.
Yeah, I thought they were gone, and I spent one night in my apartment, and I woke up to what looked like rice everywhere. It was not rice, it's eggs. Eggs and eggs and egg on everything that I owned. Everything. And it's like one of those horror movie moments where it's just like everything has to go. I can't have anything that's in here. I can't live here. I can't stay here. I just have the suitcase of the stuff that I packed for Italy, and I have this idea of what I want to do, but that's it. That's all I had, and I was unable to stay there. My parents are separated, they're divorced, and my dad at the time was living in Barrie, Ontario, which, if people don't know, that's about like an hour to an hour and a half away, especially depending on if you're driving or taking transit. My mom was living in Mississauga in an apartment building that didn't have any extra space for me. And I was basically like, if I don't drive at the time, I didn't have a license. I just had like a bicycle and a suitcase and no apartment. And I was like, okay, where am I going to stay and what am I going to do? And I want to highlight this for people. Just because you don't see somebody sitting on the street doesn't mean that they're not unhoused in some way. They don't have a place to stay. They're traveling from couch to couch. When they get to the point of actually being in a place that is as uncomfortable as being outside, that is a different version altogether. There are tons of people that are experiencing a version of homelessness, as in they don't have their own home. They are completely transitory, which is the version that I lived as for about like 6 months. And it was awful. I could not stay at friends' houses more than a little bit. I was only on like a couch. They were worried that they were going to get bed bugs. I didn't have a job. I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but no job. So I was bouncing from place to place. I would get a job, but I was so emotionally and ill-regulatedly stressed out that eventually, and I thought I was being normal at the time. I look back now and like I probably seemed like this really stressed out, high-strung person that was really just trying to get by and do stuff. But anything that would make my life harder was just it seemed like it was having a bad reaction. So I would lose like I think I went through like 4 jobs in 2 months and just having to keep trying and keep going. I found a place to stay for about a month, and that's when things kind of started to move forward. I'm like, okay, all of my stuff can stay here for this time. I didn't have any really close, all of my close friends basically abandoned me because they were unable, they didn't want to help me, or I thought that they would help me, but they weren't really close friends. I was just having trouble finding traction in my life or having trouble finding a way to kind of move things forward and make a good start of it. When I found a place to stay for a month, I basically rode my bicycle into the city because they lived in Scarborough. So I had like an hour-long bicycle ride into the city, an hour-long bicycle ride out of the city because I didn't have enough money for transit. I didn't have enough money for food. The people I was staying with were also feeding me. And I ended up getting a job at like Verst, the hot dog place on King Street. And I ran into a friend of mine who was willing to let me stay at his house if I'd like helped him like rent it out or a little bit, or I got a job nearby. And then I ended up renting from them, but they lied to me and it was far too expensive. So I was like stuck in another situation. But during that time, through all of this, once I was able to get a little bit of traction with, okay, I'm here for a month. I don't have to think about where I'm going to be sleeping every week, every time I'm shifting somewhere else. Then I started thinking, how am I going to get back on this track to have an importing company, to work in the wine industry? And I started looking for every free resource that I could find, every single thing that I could do. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I could learn about importing fairly easily. It's not really that hard to import. Like the basics of starting an importing company in Canada are not hard. You register your company, you get a manufacturer's representative license, which you basically have a winery from somewhere else say, we want this person to be in charge of us as our guardianship in the marketplace. And then you register for a license, and then there you go, you have that company. But I didn't have any credibility or any way really into the wine industry because outside of going to those trade shows. And I decided that I had to go for my sommelier certification, which was going to have a specific cost to it. This is where I start putting in the plan to save up. It was about like $1,500 which was so hard to save at the time. It's so difficult to save money when you're constantly worried about how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to get food? How am I going to do this? Oh, I lost this job again. Can't get this going, all of that. And I just saved up and I started that process.
I want to go back to something that you said, and this is around the fact that in that process you lost friends. And I'm wondering whether you can talk a little bit about what you realized about your connections, your relationships during that period of transition for you.
Yeah, like so in terms of my view on friendship in general, because it heavily involves, I was very heavily bullied when I was a child, like those like poster kids of if it's a movie and some kid is getting beaten up and thrown in a locker, it was me. Which when I tell people this now, most of the time they don't believe me, which is fine. I'm really happy to outgrow this, but I didn't really have any friends when I was like in elementary school. I actually didn't make friends for the first time until high school. And when I went to university, I ended up having to make friends again because none of my friends from high school were in my university. So I am very happy to be by myself. And I kind of, as much as all of those transformative years are very difficult, at the end of the day, it is myself that I can rely on. And I'm very happy in my own company. I was really shocked because when I did actually need these people's help, and I helped them move. They helped me move a couple of times. I'd made these friends in university. And by the time I was going through this process, we had known each other for like 5, 6 years at this point, enough to help someone. I had a friend who, about a year before this, exited a really bad breakup. and they needed a place to stay. So they were staying with me. It was like, no questions asked. I have a pull-out couch. You stay there. And I did not get the same reciprocation from them for all of their worry that they were going to get what had caused me to not have a home anymore. Even though I'd washed all my clothes, I'd made sure everything was fine. I didn't want to bring that to their house because then it would be like shooting myself in the foot, right? So when I had lost all these people in my life, my family was there for me, but they're not really close, like physically close, so I can't lean on them for this. I wasn't able to really lean on people except for a couple friends here and there, and they were also trying to get their lives off the ground. Whoever I could stay with was who ended up being my friends for a longer period of time. And at the end of the day, in my mind, I'm like, the only person I can rely on is myself. And I can bet on myself. I'm sure I will do well. I'm confident that I will do good. I don't know how well everybody else will do, but my research over the years of living my life have shown me that if I put more effort into what I am doing, I am sure I will succeed. So that's essentially is a very what is it? Self-aggrandizing revelation, but a good one at that.
Well, would you say self-aggrandizing or just a moment of self-awareness that perhaps you didn't have before?
I think it's a self-awareness more that I didn't have before, where it was just like, I know that I'll be fine. I'd lived on my own since I was like a teenager. I had been working for myself for so long. Even my friends now call me like their most logical friend. Like, I'm sure we figured out. And I think it was kind of a realization that also pushed me more into being more of the serial entrepreneur that I am, where it's just like, I know I will succeed. I know that if I do it, I will succeed because I don't want to lose and it's my life. Why wouldn't I want to preserve myself and have my own self-preservation?
And part of your road to success was getting your sommelier certification in 2017. And
Yes.
then that idea that was sparked in your head when you were in Italy about starting this importing business came into fruition in 2018. And you
Yeah.
decide to partner with two other people, but things go south. So, can you talk about what happened there?
Yeah, I will. So I was working on setting up this importing company at the same time as getting my sommelier certification. There was a bunch of free classes in Toronto at the time on how to set up an importing agency, how to do this, how to do that. I was also building the biggest thing that I tell people to do if they are starting a business is to network in the place that you want to be. Because if you're selling to people, they have to know who you are. Nobody actually cares about buying anything from anyone that they actually don't know. That's their gut check half the time. So while I was getting my sommelier certification, I was trying to meet with every general manager at every restaurant, every buyer, be like, hey man, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm Renee. Nice to meet you. So that by the time I actually start setting this up, I am no longer an unknown person. They know who I am. They've met me before. They've seen my face. This is fine. We do the sommelier certification. I pass. I barely pass. I hate taking tests. And I'm setting up this company, and I have two business partners, one of which is that export manager from Castello di Rancade in Italy, and the other person whose name I'm going to change very slightly, her name was Jennifer. And, I invited them to basically start this business. And, I learned that you probably shouldn't start a business with people that you don't know very well. My partner says this about me all the time. I have a very big naivete towards people in general. I feel like people will do the right thing or be kind to other people 100% of the time because that's what I would do. And I think most people would do what I would do. Which, again, this is that like self-preservation problem that I have, or it's not a good problem, but like I'm constantly looking back towards myself. Like, well, if I would do that, somebody else would do that. And why would they screw me over? I'm like helpful in their life, so why would that happen? And you should really suss out everybody that you want to make money with because You never know who you'll be in business with and who they end up being. You might not know everything about them, which is the lesson that I very much learned the hard way. We're doing this business, things are moving forward. I get these weird ideas coming from Jennifer about how she wants to sell options on credit to creditors of wine that's so when you import wine, it has to go on a boat and it comes overseas. And how it works with the LCBO is that they actually set up all those trade routes for you. So you don't have to set them up. You don't have to purchase a container. They already work with containers that they are using because they're lobbying for these routes for the 2 million people, 4 to 6 million people that live in Ontario. Actually, I think it's 10 million. Whatever amount of people live in Ontario, they're arguing to use those trade routes for all of those people because it's the bureaucracy of the LCBO, not the stores, the bureaucracy that sets up all those channels. So therefore, you get better shipping rates. You don't have to find a container, make sure it's air conditioned, make sure it's going to the right place because they have them set up in every wine producing region of the world. You just have to make sure that the winery gets it to a specific port. And then that from that port, the LCBO will take it to the Toronto port. That's basically how that system works. So she was trying to sell credits on the wine that was coming overseas. So we would sell the prospect of having this wine. And I'm looking like I'm having trouble explaining this because I had trouble even understanding what this concept was. But we were essentially going to sell money, sell options on the fact that these things were coming in the prospect that they would sell within a specific period of time. And if they didn't, we would owe creditors money. And I was like, that's a dumb idea. That's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would we do this? And there was a bunch of ideas like that where I was like, this is really dumb. This is really stupid. And then the two of them got together and had this meeting. Well, I thought the business was going well. I'm like, we're selling really well. We're getting more space at the LCBO. The LCBO also provides warehouse space for importers as well. We earned warehouse space. We were earning more warehouse space. We had more clients. People were paying us on time. If they weren't paying us on time, I had a tactic. They didn't like it, which is basically to go to a restaurant and not leave a table until I got paid if they didn't pay me within 90 days, which I feel is fair. Um, and they didn't like my tactics, even though the business was making money, and they wanted to do these other things. So there was one trade show, there's trade shows around the world for importers to find products that they might want to import. They went together to one. And when they came back, everything kind of shifted. And then they cornered me with a fake meeting. We were supposed to meet with my girlfriend at the time. We were supposed to meet with her to do a website remodel, and she was going to do that for us. But they wanted to meet earlier before we met with my girlfriend just to kind of, they said it was about making sure we were on the same page about the website. That was a ruse. I walked into an apartment with a note taker and was immediately presented with they no longer wanted me to be the CEO of the company that I started and that I was supposed to still sell wine and do deliveries for them. And like instantly, I go into flight or fight mode and seem like this crazy person who's upset because I'm ambushed. And I end up calming down and being like, okay, okay. And we go to see my girlfriend at the time. I'm texting her in the car, telling her what happened. I'm like, make sure we go through this meeting like normal because I'm not dealing with these people anymore, but I'm not going to be surprised again by anything that they do. I set up all the legal stuff for the corporation and I made sure that it was done with people that I really liked. And I sent them the very next day through the lawyer with everything, packed up all the samples, put them in the warehouse space that they had. My girlfriend at the time put all the bottles in different boxes, so they were ultra confusing. And we just left everything there, sent a message through the lawyer saying they owed me this much money. I was no longer going to be part of the business and to remove me from everything. It was
Wow.
like, if you're going to surprise me, well, guess what?
That's a lot because there's a betrayal aspect to it, right? Like when you enter into business with people and when they effectively turn their backs on you, that must have been a huge sense of betrayal.
Yeah. I was really mad at them. I still kind of am, but now I just pity them because I'm like, for Jennifer, I'm like, you would not know anybody in this industry without me. You wouldn't have this. She owns the business now. The other person is gone. He actually recently came to me and was like, you were right. Because the last thing I said to him, I'm like, she's going to do this to you too. Wait and watch. It's going to happen to you too. And he met his life partner in Canada and ended up emigrating here. And I was like, I gave you this. So why would you not want me to continue to be part of doing this? You know, when I look back on these moments in my life from bed bugs to like, which was traumatic and really awful, but I lost everything and then I got to move into this new world. And then it has its own traumatic entrance and uphill battle, but then I was in this new space. And then when my import company kind of fell, you know, importing agencies don't tend to make don't tend to make profit until about like 10 years, 8 to 10 years of ownership, you see a full turnaround. So, and even a winery takes about 5 years before you see like a real turnaround in profitability. So I was like, well, this is kind of a blessing in disguise. Now I don't have to be in business with these two idiots and I can make money sooner and see profitability faster as I was working in the importing company with these people that ended up, and it was so hard because they did betray me and they played to my face for years that they were my friends, even as this was about to happen. Then they would ask me things after. I'm like, I'm not dealing with you. Mm-mm. They were using my image because I had all the credibility and they didn't. So I had to ask them to stop doing that. And it was just kind of crazy. But then I started this consulting company while I had the importing company that was just mine, and I ended up growing that for a bit before the pandemic.
I want to get to that in a sec. I just wanted for my listeners to clarify something. So, LCBO is Liquor Control Board of Ontario.
Hmm.
Ontario is one of the provinces in Canada, and the LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to let people know that just in case they were a little bit confused about what LCBO means. To my listeners, what do you think of my chat with Renee Sfarazza? I'd love to hear from you. Just DM me on Blue Sky at thestumblingspirit.bsky.social. So, in 2018, you decide to start your wine consulting business,
Hmm.
and then something happens in 2020 that shifts everything around.
Hmm.
So, can you talk about that experience?
Okay, spoiler alert, the thing that happens in 2020 happened to all of us. It was the pandemic and it changed everything. But I'll go back into that. Spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, yes, you're right. It did.
Yeah, but we'll go back. It really screwed stuff up for me. Like, ew. Um, Working on my wine comedy career. Just kidding, I'm not. But so in 2018, as I was doing this importing agency, I was like, okay, this business is not making as much money as I need it to make to let my life be fully cemented by it. Because in all of this goal of every time I work for myself, my goal for the longest time has been be completely sustainable as a self-earning person that doesn't have to work for anybody else. Great. That was the goal forever, which has been accomplished. Woohoo. But in 2018, I started the Wine by Renee consulting company, which ended up becoming the Wine by Renee marketing and media business, which we will get to. Nothing changed about the website or the SEO or anything. But I was doing on-floor sommelier work at a restaurant in Toronto for this big corporation called Liberty Group. And I was in charge of this really, really huge restaurant called Chibo in downtown Toronto. It's like a 300 seat restaurant. So I was doing, if you know it, you know it. It has a full Italian wine list. It's huge and it's really, really busy. So it's a very different type of sommelier work. It is not like this small restaurant. Oh, hello, this bottle is this. We do slow service here. This was fast, quick, finance bro type people who have expense accounts and me being like, so what do you want to do? You really, I could get you something for your palette, but are you sure you don't want to like splurge or like do more? And I'm really competitive. I really like giving people a good experience, but also trying to make sure that they are having the most amount of fun at this restaurant so that they keep spending their money there because that's how I'm also earning from that consulting of having that on-floor experience with earning more for that business. I also expanded the business to help smaller restaurants that don't need a full-time sommelier, where I was training their staff and changing their wine list 2 to 4 times a year. And these are people that would have like 20 wines on a wine list. They need full staff training. They don't need somebody there. They just need it to have. So I had like a good couple of people in my client list for that. And then this massive like on-floor experience. And then the pandemic happened, and nobody needed to go to restaurants or pay some lady to tell them about what wine they should buy anymore because that seemed like an egregious expense.
So you had a change of strategy at that moment. What was it?
I will not lie and say that I spent a week on my couch drinking some of the wine that I had. Um, Trying to figure out what to do because during the first week of the pandemic in Ontario, they hadn't quite figured out how to, actually in Canada, abroad, like just across the whole country, they hadn't quite figured out how long this was going to be. And for those who don't fully remember or blacked out and don't want to remember, the pandemic just didn't happen all of a sudden one day. It was just like things were kind of, the writing was on the wall. I was trying to make stuff happen within my business. People were like, "Oh yeah, we'll circle back to that in 2 weeks. I think there's something happening with this virus. Something's going on. You know what? Let's wait 2 weeks and then we'll start doing it again." And then things shut down, and all income is gone. I don't know where I'm getting. I don't know how I'm paying my rent, and I go back into the same mode that I was in when I became homeless. And I was like, now what am I going to do? This is terrifying. I really don't want to do this again. I've already been through this once before, and I don't remember enjoying this period of not having enough funds to make my life move forward. And about a week after the pandemic started, the CERB benefits came. I don't remember what CERB stands for, but it was like the government benefits that gave you $2,500 a month that you could spend however you wanted and you can use to do your life. That was enough money for me to pay my rent, buy groceries, all other expenses for the how many months? Like the 5 to 6 months that we were stuck inside our homes and not able to earn. Actually, I think it was like 8 months. It was a long period of time. And once that kicked in, and I was no longer like hyperventilating about how am I going to pay rent. Luckily, my landlord was also a small business owner, and I was like, please give me a break. Like, I'll pay you, I swear. I just don't know what I'm going to do. And his parents lived below me. I lived in this house, so we had this agreement where as long as I was in the bubble with them, then he was cool with that. So I got a lucky break, but a lot of people did. Once that kind of came through and I wasn't screaming or worried about how I was going to eat or live or where I was going to live or what was going to happen, then I was able to, again, to have that comfort feeling of what am I going to do next? What am I going to do in that next bit? And the only part of my business that survived was the small portion that I was building that was all online, virtual events, social media content, all of this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on doing online stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to focus on doing online stuff. And I found this like guideline to getting 10,000 followers on Instagram. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to read this. And I'm going to do what it says. So did that. And then everything started growing. Things started growing. Clients that had known me from the restaurant business were like reaching out to me being, would you like to write in our publication? Would you like to come and do a virtual TV segment? Would you be interested in doing this or that? So people were reaching out to me because I'd done all this goodwill in my industry of networking and making sure people knew that I existed and who I was. And now it was kind of coming back professionally, which is, and also because I was continuing to be present online. I think it also came back in that way. And then I remember about like 8 months into doing this, I got like my first paid content creation gig. I was like, oh, people can pay me to do this? Amazing. So then I just kept selling that same concept over and over again. I would just raise the price a little and like raise the price a little and then add other stuff into it and change the price a little and just keep playing with things that worked. I was also running virtual events at the time, which I don't do anymore because now they no longer work, but those were really good. People really enjoyed them. And those were making money. So now I have Serb that's coming in, but I'm also like earning money from doing these things. And the pandemic was awful for many people, and it was not a cup of tea in many ways. But for me, not being out and about and being in this space where it was just focusing on my business, this is the first time that I was actually able to be a self-sustaining person who is self-employed fully.
That's incredible. So it was really that focus on content creation and specifically what you were doing on Instagram that catapulted you and was the reason for your success or what led to greater success in the career that you've cultivated. And you mentioned that it led you to doing wine segments on TV and writing for food and lifestyle magazines. So I'm wondering, looking back on your journey, what have been the highlights of your career?
Like it's so interesting because I feel like I'm living more of the highlights like last year and this current year. Like I'm really excited about them. I literally was at an event yesterday and someone's like, "How did you come up with this business?" I'm like, I just said yes to everything and it kind of worked out. And somehow by saying yes to everything, it kind of cobbled together this business that I can now sell these concepts to people. I think if I look back at the highlights, as much as I hated all of the hardship, it was incredibly useful because it cleared out my life from all these things that I had so much stuff in my house before I got bed bugs, and then I had nothing. So now I'm free of that, which, yeah, it was traumatic and it was awful as we talked about, but I didn't have to worry about any of that anymore. I didn't have anything. I didn't have to worry about the light fixture business because all the wood that I owned is gone. I can't use it. It has bed bugs in it. They live in wood, by the way. And I didn't have the importing business anymore. I didn't have to deal with these people. I didn't have to lug wine around. I didn't have to sell stuff. I didn't have to drive things. I didn't have to make sure I had delivery people. I didn't have to do any of that anymore. That's gone. That's freedom from that aspect. And then the pandemic was, I didn't have to go to a restaurant and spend hours on the floor to make the same amount of money that I can now do with one campaign sitting at my desk at home. I don't know. Like, I really think that people should bet on themselves and like you're gonna succeed if you want to succeed. You will find a way forward and never stop trying to sell something to someone. Somebody will pay for it. Somebody will pay for whatever it is. So I just kind of followed those principles. And so I guess the highlights are tragedy and betting on myself and just continuing to try to sell stuff to people.
One of the things I also heard in what you were saying is that by shedding the stuff of your life, it created freedom and capacity for you to be able to focus on your passion and your business. And that was something that really benefited you.
Yeah, I'm quite introspective in that aspect where it's just like I do like to look back on like the more difficult times of my life and think like how did this get me forward? And so every relationship that you have with other people will teach you something. Everything that you go through that is an uphill battle, you will learn something from it. You learn how to figure out these things. You learn a lot from every mistake that you make. And, they all cleared out my life in ways that I wouldn't have what I have now. Even the pandemic, because I didn't have, now I don't work in restaurants at all. I met my life partner, who I wouldn't have met because she works in such a different industry than me. And when we started dating in 2021, she was like, "What would we be doing on a Friday night if you were still in restaurants?" I'm like, "We? I'd be working. You'd be doing something else." "What do you mean we? We're not doing anything together on Friday night. I'm working till like 1 in the morning." So that also cleared out my life to have an amazing relationship and build out my personal life, which I wasn't really focused on. So, it's always good to look back at things and be like, that was hard, but there is a benefit that came from it all at the same time. And nothing is without happiness and sadness together, or detraction and benefit. There's a wonderful Buddhist proverb that says, you know that you're happy because you know how sadness feels.
I love that. I love that. That's really beautiful.
hmm Right. So every day cannot be a good day because then you would not know if you're having a good day.
I could see you getting a little bit
I
emotional.
know I get very emotional with that because I tell people those things all the time. And like, as you have seen from me telling my story, it's a little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah. Such is life. But I always feel, and this is the reason why I have this podcast, is I feel like it's such a gift when someone shares their story because there's always going to be one thing that someone says that will be able to inspire someone and lift them up
Mhm.
during their time of adversity. So I really appreciate you for opening up and sharing that about your life and your story, you know?
Thank you. And the best part about all this now is that, like I said, I feel like I'm living my highlights now with the business that I have now, which is a marketing and media company. We create national and now international content for beverage brands, wineries, food companies, tourism companies, and we create all these authentic conversations that people can stumble across in their own life, whether they're looking for it, or maybe it might be something that we put a little bit of sponsorship dollars on and that might find you if the phones are listening to us. It's very helpful for marketing people, but scary in the world that we're in. And it's really opened this door of traveling more, doing what I really like. Like last year, I went on 30 trips in the year because that's what I needed to do for my business. And because it's going so well, I even started another business last year in a completely different area, still within food and beverage, but it's an AI company. It's actually called Peek and the Chef, and it can teach you how to cook a restaurant dish that you might have seen on a restaurant menu somewhere in the world. And it really helps a lot of people have more experiences at home and create a lot of really great ways for them to bring those concepts that I like about food and beverage, which is you explore it at your own pace, into the way that people can explore it on their own. The highlight is that now I get to create, after all of that, now I get to create what I've always wanted to do because life is stable.
That's amazing. And I'm glad that you talked about your business or aspects of your business. You're talking about the digital side of your business. So, can you talk about the other aspects of your business?
Yeah, so like in terms of the other aspects, I guess I mainly see them as like a lot of networking. I'm doing a no BS hacking networking class for like 19 and 20-year-olds to learn about like how to network successfully, because networking is basically about meeting people and making professional friends. And I'm constantly doing that all the time. How can I be the version of myself that is inside of me that is the most likable, the most like, I want to work with her on something, the most engaged, the most passionate about what I'm passionate about, but able to show that to people? How can I put all of that forward? Because when I do put all of that forward, it comes back in spades. People are like, oh, I really want to work with her. She sounds like she really knows what she's talking. I do, but she sounds like she really knows what she's talking about. She's really passionate, which I am, but it's also how do I push that forward, push that of me forward? Because not every aspect of me is that. Some parts of me, like everybody else, is unconfident. Oh, I didn't get enough done today. Unhappy with something, or I wish I did this more. I wish I really could understand meditating. Like, I'm really bad at it. But I think those are the other sides of the business. And then the other thing too is there is a lot of mundane stuff to owning a business. I meet people all the time who are like, "Oh, I work at this company that pays me like I own this business." And like, have you been to the mailroom? Have you ever learned like what it's like to talk to the payroll people? Have you like made friends with the janitorial staff? Like, you don't know what it's like to own a business because if you own a business, then you're paying attention to all these things even if you're it's not the thing you have to do. I outsource a lot of my work now that my company is bigger, but I have to pay attention to all this mundane stuff. We did a CRM update with 3,000 new contacts. I have to know something about all those 3,000 people. Taxes are coming up. I gotta tell my accountant what we should do or what I want to accomplish with the tax year and how I want to set up this year, right? So all of this mundane stuff, which is boring, accounting is boring, and all of these things are what you have to pay attention to. And at the end of the day, it's kind of fun to revel in. I get to do this in my pajamas, and I'm doing this for me. It does suck, but it's for me.
This is a really good segue. I'm wondering if you could offer advice to anybody who's interested in becoming a sommelier and working in the wine industry.
So if anybody wants to become a sommelier and learn and be in the wine industry, figure out if you want to become a sommelier, all you have to do is study wine, which is basically stop thinking about do I like this or not in terms of a wine, which is how consumers drink wine. Do I like this or not? Did I spend my money well or not? Did I enjoy this or not? Right? Remove that from your mental processing of wine because there's your palate, which is my personal palate is very different than my professional palate, which is what you now have to develop. What does this product mean outside of my own personal beliefs and feelings about it so that I can understand it to translate why somebody else might like it. Now, I'll give you an example just because it might be better for listeners than this amorphous thing that I just said. My personal palate is I want to drink champagne every day with every meal because it's yummy. And I rarely want to drink big, bold, dark colored red wines. For example, California Cabernet Sauvignons, Malbecs, Barossa Shirazes from Australia. Not my personal cup of tea. Am I constantly writing and making interesting content and doing things for my clients that focuses on those products? Yes. People like them. Why do they like them? What makes these brands stand out? Why are they showcasing their sense of place? How can I understand that as a sommelier? So that's like the first step that I tell people. And then it's all about reading, learning, tasting, being more academic. But if you can drop that, then you are into the academic version of wine because I could drink champagne all day, but Shiraz is selling right now. So that's that concept. And then, sorry, that's your other thing is if people want to get into the industry, you have to decide how you want to be in the industry. Do you want to, and this is for any industry, do you want to be a job person? Do you want to be a career person? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Where do you sit in that? If you want to have a job with somebody and you're an on-floor sommelier, that's great. But you can also be a wine sales agent. You could be on the marketing side of things. You might want to make wine. Like, where do you sit? It's a very full industry with a lot going on. So it's not just you have to learn all this stuff, but then you have to learn this job aspect that kind of goes in. Your winemaking knowledge is going to be very different than your marketing knowledge. I know a lot about marketing, but I cannot make a wine. I can tell you if it's going well, but I can't make this wine from start to finish.
I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm wondering what this passion that you have of being a sommelier, having your own wine business, what has this journey taught you about yourself and life in general?
It is something that you can connect with everybody on. They have an opinion about it, whether they have a strong opinion or not, or whether they drink wine or not, or whether they do something or not. So, in that aspect, I feel like I like this business because I get to connect with people. I also like this business because it has all of these really fun aspects at so many different levels. You can visit a winery and see the soil, and you can see this tangible aspect. You can stand on a vineyard in Champagne and be like, this is the place where this bottle at your house comes from. And I'm standing here. It's incredibly connective and global, but also really personal all at the same time. And I really like concepts that are incredibly global, but also deeply personal.
What does resilience mean to you?
You know, like not giving up is like a basic way to say this, but like there's always another way around a problem. Being resilient is, and having resilience is the ability to also realize that you might not accomplish your goal in the timeline that you would like to, but you can still go towards your goal and reach it in a different way if you just keep trying. And maybe this avenue isn't the right way. Everybody's seen that thing where it's like the pathway to success is not a straight line, it's a squiggly thingy, is very true. It's surprising even when you're living through it because I didn't think I'd have to do any of this to start an importing company and to do this and to do that and make things happen. You just kind of trying to keep moving forward and picking the thing that would best benefit you to move towards your goal. And having that mantra in mind is so important in that resiliency because, like, resiliency is this also inability to let go of the thing that you want to do.
Interesting. I like that. I like that answer. This season, I'm exploring the connection between compassion and resilience. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering whether you have any thoughts around how compassion influences resilience.
To me, compassion and empathy kind of go together. And when you are very empathetic and understanding about people around you, you are able to really kind of see how your goals can be met in that resilient mind frame because you're not alone. You're not in a void, in a vacuum. It's not just you going to the other side to make sure something there's people there. They're all there. They're all going to talk to you and maybe pay you or prevent you from getting something, or you might have to compete with them, or they might be your friend or your enemy, whoever. So having empathy and understanding, which is empathy plus understanding is compassion, to me it is. Having that kind of aspect in your general day-to-day life is so important to kind of moving you forward because you do catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Being kinder and nicer and just a joy to be around is really good. People tend to like those types of people. And if you are really resilient and moving towards a goal, that is incredibly important for you to have.
What are your practices of resilience?
Whether I want to or not, if I've decided I will work, I will get to my desk and I will do something. Now, will I do the big tasks? Like some of the tasks I have on my list, they genuine I'm like I'm not ready to do it. I my ADHD makes me catatonic or I just can't focus on it for the day. I will find something to do that will accomplish some portion of it. And maybe it's okay, today I really don't feel like I could type up this proposal. I know I have to get it done this week, but it's going to take me hours and I have to research all this stuff and they want this breakdown. I'm like, "Oh my God, this sounds like a lot of work." You know, it doesn't editing these 30 photos that I also have to do. So it's not necessarily about having the world's most productive day, but like kind of getting to your day and moving it forward as much as you can, even if that day means that you move it a little bit, something happened. You still got up, did the thing, accomplished what you promised yourself. Cry about it later if you're upset with how well and how little you did, or vice versa, and move on because every day is going to be a different day. And like I said, you will never know what a good day is until you live through it and until you live through days that are also not good.
I think you already answered this question, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on it. So you describe that just getting to work
Mhm.
is an important aspect in your life of resilience. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on why that benefits you.
When you work for yourself, any time that you like chip away at the thing that you want to do, but like the moment I stop doing all of this is the moment I'm no longer making any money. Everything is gone. It when you bet on yourself, you also have to do it yourself. You have to do it. You have to be there. You have to show up. If I just took a month-long vacation, I had to set up my life so that I could take a month-long vacation. And there was work before, and there is now work after since I've been back from this. So showing up for yourself is one of the greatest things that you can do if you want to be an entrepreneur or even have like a great career. That's why I have job, career, entrepreneur kind of the same together. If you're showing up for a job every day, you are expecting to do exactly what that entails and move forward. When you have this drive and ambition to move forward, you have to continue to show up for what you do because the moment that you stop, it's not there anymore. Even when you see these like massive CEOs who are in charge of these companies and they're older and they're retired and they still work 3 days a week for 3 hours a day, it's that need to push forward in that ambition that you have to do. You have to show up for it, or it will not happen.
How can people reach you if they want to contact you?
I am available on Instagram, very reachable on there. I go by Wine by Renee on Instagram. And then everything from there you can find. There's a link tree for all, if you see me anywhere else, say hello and reach out. All of the work that I do is available for people to see for free, to interact with for free.
Renee Svaratsa is sommelier, wine expert, and owner of Wine by Renee. Renee, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you all the success, even more success than what you've been able to create in your life. And I really appreciate you sharing your inspirational story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fabio. I really liked being here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Stumbling Spirit, Contemplations on the Path of Resilience. This is Fabio da Silva Fernandez. Join me again for another episode of transformative stories and beneficial practices to guide you on your wellness journey. If you wish, you can follow and DM me on Blue Sky at thestumblingspirit.bsky.social. Until next time, take a deep breath and another step forward on your path of resilience.